Most people live their lives reacting to what they see. They judge based on appearances, they make assumptions rooted in what society has taught them, and they rarely take the time to look deeper. A woman's body, her curves, her posture, her expressions, these are all parts of her human design, but they're not the whole story. And yet, we live in a world obsessed with surfaces. When someone sees a woman with a large backside, they might make a judgment, an assumption about her personality, her character, her sensuality, or even her sexual nature. But what they fail to realize is that judgment isn't telling them anything about her. It's revealing everything about themselves. The lens through which we view others is the same lens through which we view ourselves. So when you find yourself labeling others, you're actually shining a light on your own internal world. See, every perception is shaped by belief, and beliefs are nothing more than thoughts you've repeated so many times they've turned into truth in your mind. But here's the kicker: truth and belief are not the same thing. You might believe something about someone, about yourself, about life, and live through that filter for decades. But that belief could be completely false. It could be holding you back. It could be keeping you stuck in the same pattern, repeating the same emotions, dating the same kind of people, facing the same disappointments. Why? Because you're stuck on the surface. When you train your mind to look beyond appearances, when you challenge the meaning you assign to things, everything changes. That's when you start seeing the soul, not the skin. You begin to ask better questions, not "what does this mean about her?" but "why do I think this way?" You begin to understand that judgment is lazy thinking. It's the default of a mind that hasn't been taught to seek truth. A powerful mind, a disciplined, awakened mind asks, "What am I really seeing here? What story am I telling myself? And is that story rooted in truth or just conditioning?" When you start looking deeper, not just at others, but at yourself, you begin to uncover parts of you that have been buried under judgment, insecurity, and old programming. That's when transformation starts. You start realizing that everything you see out there is really a mirror of what's going on in here. If you're constantly noticing flaws in other people, it's because you've trained your mind to look for what's wrong, maybe because you're always doing the same thing to yourself. If you assume the worst about others, it's often because deep down, you assume the worst about yourself. If you shame someone else or judge them or envy them, it's because somewhere you haven't fully accepted your own power. But it's not your fault. You were taught to think this way. You inherited it from the media, from your culture, from your parents, your peers, your past experiences. The way you see people, especially women, has been shaped by outside influences that taught you to objectify, to reduce someone's complexity to a body part, a stereotype, a role. But here's the good news. You can unlearn it. You can change your mental programming. You can choose to wake up. And when you do, when you start seeing people for their energy, their depth, their story, something incredible happens. You start attracting that same depth into your life. You see, nothing external can define someone's value, not their appearance, not their body, not their past. Value comes from within. The same way you assign value to others is how you assign value to yourself. So if you're operating on surface-level thinking, you're limiting your own potential. But if you dig deeper, if you teach your mind to see truth instead of illusion, you become powerful. You develop insight, you develop clarity, you develop emotional intelligence, and most importantly, you stop reacting to the world and start responding from a place of awareness. This is how confidence is built, not from changing your appearance, but from changing your perception. Confidence isn't about being perfect, it's about seeing clearly. When you stop judging others, you stop fearing their judgment. When you stop labeling others, you free yourself from the labels you wear. And when you stop focusing on how things look and start focusing on how things feel, you step into a new dimension of living. One that's rich, meaningful, grounded, and deeply fulfilling. It starts with asking better questions. It starts with challenging everything you've been taught to believe. It starts with seeing people not as objects, but as living, breathing souls with stories you know nothing about. It starts with removing the filters and letting truth come through. Because truth doesn't live on the surface. Truth is always found in depth. Your entire life is a reflection of your internal world. What you believe about yourself, what you expect from others, and what you think you deserve. These beliefs shape every single experience you attract. It doesn't matter what you say out loud or even what you hope for if your subconscious mind is anchored in limitation. You could walk into a room dressed like a king or queen, but if you believe you're unworthy of love, abundance, or happiness, the world will respond to that belief. This isn't mysticism, it's energy, it's cause and effect. It's the law of resonance. You attract not what you want, but what you are. And what you are is based on what you believe. You can't fake energy. You can't lie to the universe. The energy you carry speaks before you even open your mouth. If deep down you believe you're not good enough, not attractive enough, not smart enough, not lovable enough, those beliefs will show up in your relationships, your income, your emotional health, and your overall life experience. You'll find yourself in situations that confirm those beliefs again and again. You'll be drawn to people who reflect those doubts right back at you. You'll call it coincidence or bad luck or timing, but really, it's alignment. It's the law working perfectly. This is why it's so crucial to examine your belief system, not the beliefs you talk about when you're trying to sound confident or positive. Not the ones you post about on social media, the real beliefs, the ones hidden in your actions, your patterns, your triggers. The ones that show up in who you tolerate, how you react when someone compliments you, how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. That's where your truth lives, and that truth is shaping your entire reality. If you've ever wondered why you keep ending up in the same kind of toxic relationship, or why success always seems just out of reach, or why you sabotage good things when they show up, it's because something inside you believes you don't deserve more. And until you rewrite that belief, nothing on the outside will change permanently. You might get temporary results, you might have short bursts of success or love or confidence, but if the root belief hasn't shifted, you'll go right back to square one. That's why transformation has to happen from the inside out. This isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. It's about realizing that if your life is a reflection of your beliefs, then you have the power to change it. You're not a victim, you're a creator. Every day, in every moment, you are creating through your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. If your life doesn't reflect what you desire, you don't need to force things on the outside. You need to change what's going on inside. That's where the power is. That's where everything begins. It starts with awareness, noticing your thoughts without judgment, catching yourself when you fall into doubt or fear or comparison, asking, where did this belief come from? Is it even mine? Is it based in truth or in pain? Most of your beliefs were formed in childhood, before you had the ability to choose for yourself. You were absorbing everything, what you saw, what you heard, what you experienced. And over time, those experiences formed your identity. But you are not your past. You are not your trauma. You are not your conditioning. You are consciousness. And once you become conscious of the beliefs running your life, you can choose differently. Rewriting a belief doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It requires repetition, intention, and emotion. You have to reprogram your mind the same way you would reprogram a computer. That means feeding it new input daily. Affirmations alone won't cut it if you don't feel them. You have to attach emotion to the new belief. You have to visualize yourself as the version of you who already embodies that truth. You have to take action as if it were already real. And when resistance comes up, and it will, you meet it with love. You remind yourself that discomfort is just part of growth, that you're not breaking down, you're breaking free. Everything in your external world will eventually catch up to your internal shift. People will start treating you differently. Opportunities will begin to flow. You'll notice synchronicities, blessings, breakthroughs. But they're not magic, they're reflections, they're your energy being mirrored back to you. When you believe in your worth, you stop chasing. You stop settling, you stop shrinking to fit into spaces that don't honor who you are. You start walking in rooms like you belong. You start speaking your truth without apology. You start creating from confidence instead of fear. That's the power of belief. It builds your world. If your beliefs are rooted in lack, your life will feel like survival. If your beliefs are rooted in power, your life will feel like creation. The choice is always yours, and once you realize that, nothing can stop you from becoming the person you were meant to be. Sexual energy is one of the most misunderstood forces on this planet. It's been reduced to lust, taboo, and shame for centuries, yet it holds within it the raw, creative power of life itself. This energy is not something to suppress or be ashamed of. It's a force that, when directed consciously, can unlock levels of confidence, magnetism, and personal power that most people never tap into. Sexual energy isn't just about the physical body or intimate encounters. It's about vitality, presence, passion, and personal alignment. It's the life force that creates not only physical life, but also art, innovation, love, and purpose. When a woman owns her sexual energy, when she walks in full ownership of her body, her femininity, her emotional flow, she becomes magnetic. But that magnetism isn't rooted in how her body looks. It's not about how curvy she is, how she dresses, or how others perceive her. It's about how deeply connected she is to herself. It's the frequency she radiates, the authenticity she embodies, and the self-respect she carries. You can see this in women who walk into a room and turn heads not because of physical beauty alone, but because of their energy. It's unshakable, it's sovereign, it's radiant, and that radiance comes from within. This same principle applies to anyone, man or woman. When you stop compartmentalizing your sexual energy and start integrating it into your personal development, your whole life expands. Because that energy is not meant to be hidden or shut down. It's meant to be cultivated and directed. In its raw form, it's desire. But when refined, it becomes ambition, intuition, charisma, and even healing power. You begin to speak with more conviction. You create with more clarity. You connect with more authenticity. And others can feel that. They may not understand what they're sensing, but they'll be drawn to it. That's the power of embodied sexual energy. It speaks louder than words. Most people live disconnected from this part of themselves. They either ignore it completely or use it recklessly. In both cases, the result is disempowerment. Suppression leads to shame, numbness, and internal conflict. Overindulgence leads to emptiness, addiction, and burnout. But when you learn to balance and harmonize your sexual energy with your higher purpose, you become unstoppable. You no longer seek validation through temporary pleasures or surface-level approval. You begin to move from a place of wholeness. You become the source of your own satisfaction. That's the difference between using energy unconsciously and channeling it intentionally. There's a direct link between sexual energy and confidence. When you accept and honor your own body, when you stop judging yourself through the lens of cultural conditioning, you reclaim your power. You begin to move differently. You speak differently. You attract differently. That's because you've removed the inner resistance that was blocking your light. Confidence isn't about proving something. It's about knowing who you are and allowing that truth to shine without fear. When you're at peace with your own desire, when you embrace your sensual nature as sacred instead of sinful, you release the fear that kept you small. And that freedom is incredibly attractive. People pick up on energy before anything else. You can fake a smile, you can wear the best clothes, you can say the right things, but if your energy is insecure, unhealed, or scattered, people will feel it. That's why the deepest transformation doesn't come from external changes. It comes from energetic alignment. When you heal your relationship with your sexual energy, you begin to heal your relationship with your worth. You stop associating your value with how others respond to you. You begin to feel powerful simply because you exist. You learn that pleasure, expression, and self-love are not rewards, they're your birthright. The truth is, you were never meant to fit into the narrow boxes the world created for you. You were never meant to dull your shine or tame your fire to make others comfortable. You were designed to feel deeply, love boldly, and express yourself fully. Your sexual energy is not a weakness, it's a source of divine power, and when you stop judging it, hiding it, or misusing it, you begin to use it to create, to heal, to lead, to build a life that reflects your truest self. When you stand in full alignment with your body, mind, and soul, you no longer fear being seen. You no longer shrink in the presence of others. You show up with a calm, grounded authority that doesn't need to demand attention. It naturally commands it. Because when you're rooted in your own energy, you're no longer performing. You're just being, and that level of authenticity creates trust. It builds connection. It inspires others to rise into their own truth. That's the ripple effect of owning your power, not just in the bedroom, but in business, in love, in creativity, and in life. Shame is one of the most silent, corrosive forces in the human experience. It lives deep in the subconscious, buried beneath layers of memory, culture, and personal history. It doesn't scream, but it shapes. It molds how you see yourself, how you move through the world, and what you believe you deserve. Shame teaches you to hide parts of yourself. It tells you that your desires are wrong, your body isn't good enough, your past disqualifies you, your emotions are too much, your voice should be quiet, and your power is dangerous. And so, over time, you build a version of yourself that's carefully edited and filtered just to be accepted. By your family, by society, by friends, by lovers, and worst of all, by your own inner critic, but that acceptance comes at a cost. It costs you your authenticity, your aliveness, and your freedom. People don't realize how much shame they carry because it disguises itself as self-discipline, as humility, as being realistic. But if you've ever felt like you had to apologize for who you are or felt unworthy of love, success, or pleasure just because of who you've been or what you've been through, then shame has had a grip on you, and the thing about shame is, it doesn't go away by ignoring it. It grows in silence, it thrives in secrecy. The only thing that weakens shame is exposure, not in a way that makes you more vulnerable to pain, but in a way that lets you bring it to the light so it can't control you anymore. To transcend shame, you have to begin by facing it. You have to be willing to sit with the parts of yourself you've labeled as broken, unworthy, or embarrassing. You have to lean into the discomfort that you've spent years avoiding. That means looking at your story, not through the eyes of judgment, but with radical compassion. It means being honest about the masks you've worn just to feel safe, and it means letting go of the lie that something about you has to change in order for you to be loved or accepted. Shame will convince you that you are the exception to healing, that you're too far gone, too different, too flawed, but that's exactly how it keeps you small. Once you begin to break that illusion, you start reclaiming your power. Because shame can only exist in the absence of self-acceptance. The more you accept and integrate every part of you, the light and the dark, the less power shame has over you. When you can stand in your truth unapologetically and say, yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I've been through pain. Yes, I've done things I wouldn't repeat, but I'm still worthy. I'm still whole. I'm still powerful. Something shifts inside you. That's the beginning of liberation. That's the moment you stop living for approval and start living for alignment. The journey of overcoming shame is not about perfection. It's about permission, the permission to feel, to express, to be human. The permission to take up space without shrinking. The permission to own your story without rewriting it for the comfort of others. Every time you give yourself that kind of permission, you dismantle the structures shame has built within you. And those structures go deep. They show up in how you relate to your body. They show up in your hesitation to speak up. They show up in your relationships, where you either overgive or pull back out of fear of rejection. They show up in your dreams, the ones you silence because you think they're too big for someone like you. But you don't have to keep living under that weight. You don't have to keep performing for love or hustling for worth. You are not here to fit into anyone's idea of who you should be. You are here to remember who you are beneath all the conditioning. And who you are is not shameful. Who you are is powerful beyond measure. You were born with a voice, a body, a soul, and a purpose that is unique to you. And no matter what the world has told you, none of that is accidental. When you stop rejecting yourself, you stop attracting people and situations that reflect that rejection. You start aligning with environments that honor your truth. You start building relationships where you are seen, not for your image, but for your essence. The more you release shame, the more you open up to joy, creativity, intimacy, and peace. You begin to notice that the same energy you once used to hide can now be used to shine. The energy you spent trying to prove your worth can now be directed into building your vision. You become less afraid of being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. You become less addicted to validation because you've validated your own journey. And you stop waiting for permission to live fully because you realize that the only one who ever needed to say yes to you was you. Most people live their lives stuck in the habit of saying yes to everything and everyone, even when it drains them, even when it hurts, even when it pulls them further away from who they really are. This isn't because they're weak or naive, it's because they're afraid of disappointing others. Afraid of being judged, afraid of being left alone, afraid that saying no will make them seem selfish or ungrateful. But what they don't realize is that every forced yes is a silent betrayal of self. Every time you say yes to something that feels like a no, in your gut, you teach the world how to treat you, and more importantly, you teach yourself that your needs, your time, your truth don't matter. The yes syndrome is often rooted in a deep desire to be liked, to feel needed, to avoid conflict. It shows up as overcommitting, people pleasing, apologizing for your boundaries, staying silent when you want to speak, or tolerating behavior that dishonors your worth. On the outside, it might look like you're doing the right thing, being kind, being generous, being cooperative, but inside, you feel depleted, resentful, invisible. That's because you're not acting from a place of alignment. You're acting from fear, and fear cannot guide you to freedom. Only truth can. To reclaim your life, you have to begin by understanding that every yes you give is a seed planted in the soil of your future. If you keep planting seeds that don't align with your soul, don't be surprised when you wake up to a life that feels foreign, heavy, disconnected. Saying yes to everyone else while saying no to yourself is the fastest way to lose your joy, your purpose, and your power. And the truth is, people who truly respect you won't be offended by your boundaries. They'll appreciate them. The ones who guilt you, manipulate you, or punish you for honoring your truth are the ones who were benefiting from your self-betrayal. You have to start trusting your own inner voice more than the noise of the world. You have to know that your energy is sacred, your time is valuable, and your presence is not owed to anyone. Not every invitation deserves a response. Not every cry for help is yours to answer. Not every opportunity is meant for you. Your no is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of clarity, and clarity is power. When you become selective about where you give your energy, you stop scattering your focus. You begin to build momentum. You create space for what's truly meant for you. People fear that by saying no, they'll miss out. But the opposite is true. When you say no to what's not aligned, you say yes to what is. You create room for deeper relationships, more meaningful work, and richer experiences. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You begin to craft a life based on who you truly are, not who others expect you to be. And that's when your destiny begins to shift, not because of luck or miracles or outside intervention, but because you made a decision to take responsibility for your energy. Responsibility doesn't mean controlling everything. It means owning your choices. It means understanding that your life is the sum total of what you allow and what you reject. If you allow disrespect, chaos, distraction, that becomes your norm. If you choose alignment, boundaries, and truth, that becomes your new standard. Every decision you make is a declaration to the universe about what you believe you deserve. If you keep saying yes to things that make you small, the universe assumes that's what you want more of. But when you boldly say no to anything that dims your light, you send a clear signal that you are ready for more. This shift doesn't require a complete overhaul of your life overnight. It starts with one honest decision. One uncomfortable conversation, one brave moment of listening to your intuition over your fear. You start by checking in with yourself before you commit. You ask, does this align with who I am becoming, or am I agreeing just to be accepted? And then you act accordingly. It might feel unnatural at first. It might even trigger resistance, but the more you practice honoring your truth, the stronger your voice becomes. The more you trust yourself, the more grounded you feel, and the more grounded you feel, the more magnetic you become to everything that aligns with your higher path. Because the moment you stop giving away your power is the moment you begin to rewrite your story. You no longer move based on guilt or fear. You move based on vision. You no longer chase validation, you walk in certainty. You no longer shrink to be loved. You expand because you already are. This is how you change your destiny, not by waiting for a perfect moment, but by reclaiming your right to choose what serves your soul over what satisfies the crowd. And that choice, made again and again, is what sets you free.